This one's wife, rejected, so runs away fuming. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Yesterday, in my video Sidelined and Seething, I showed you some video footage which showed this one's wife stood at the side of the stage at the Kevin Costner benefit event, where I explained to you the raging battle that was taking place between her ignited fury and her facade manager. I'd also pointed out in a separate video the way that this one's wife had appeared on stage with the Prince of Pink Pancakes, and she was continuing to prod and paw him, and I queried what had happened between the two events. Well, I'm pleased to say that I've located the footage. In fact, there's quite a lengthy video that provides us with footage of what's taking place at the event. And two things arise from it. The first is a piece of footage that I'm going to show you shortly, and then also the fact of Harry making a rather lengthy, boring, and unprepared speech. I'm not going to subject you to that, because it really doesn't need any further analysis than what I've just explained to you. But he stands there for a number of minutes droning on about mental health and such like, and demonstrating that he hasn't really prepared his speech. But just like his handler, he enjoys getting hold of a microphone and droning on into it. He's clearly spent quite a lot of time listening to her. But what happened at the event, which resulted in this one's wife 1 minute being on stage and the next not? It's rather interesting, and naturally I'm going to break it down for you with regard to the dynamic between this one's wife and her intimate partner, primary source, Harry, and explain precisely why she behaves as she does. Let's have a look at the footage.
The County Assembly.
So we'd like to introduce tonight the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Hi everybody. Chief Mark Hartwig. Oh, hi. Chief Mark, thank you for giving the full context of peer support, and for those of you that come here every year, can I hear the people that come here every single time? You've probably heard some of that before, but let me start by thanking you, Chief Hartwig, because what I know is the department doesn't work without leadership like yours. You have managed to completely destroy any stigma that exists.
There were other speakers already on the stage when it was time for the Prince of Pink Pancakes and the Duchess of Delusion to make their appearance. As you've just heard, the introduction almost sounds like it was pre-recorded and is in a British accent, which made me wonder, do they actually have that as something that they hand over to event organisers? You can use this to announce our arrival. It almost sounded like somebody saying, the train, now departing from platform 10, is the delayed 10:15 to London's King's Cross. It sounded like a train station announcement. It was rather formal and didn't sound particularly enthusiastic, which was also the reaction of the crowd that gave them a polite round of applause and a few whoops and cheers, but it was hardly a deluge of noise. Anyway, you'll notice also that they were introduced as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, continuing to cling to those titles, so commencing with a nice slab of hypocrisy. Up comes the Prince of Pink Pancakes as he enters from stage right, and he looks behind towards this one's wife, and if you caught it, he gesticulates with his left hand as he's turned back, as if to say, you stay here, as if he's the one that is going to go onto the stage, presumably because he already knows that he's the one that's been invited to say a few words and to present an award. He strolls on past the guy in the purple jacket, and this one's wife waits. She turns and speaks to a stagehand, a crew member, as Harry goes on and shakes hands, and he's handed the mic. And then all of a sudden, this one's wife comes forward. It's almost as if she has been told, you two can go on the stage, quite possibly. Or she has decided herself, actually, I'm going to get in on the action. It's not entirely clear. It might be the case that the gentleman in the purple jacket ushered her on, although he seems to be more clapping than indicating. So it would appear that, once again, the narcissist has exhibited a lack of boundary recognition and decides, yeah, actually, despite Harry telling me to stay there, and the fact that I'm not speaking and I'm not presenting the award, I'll walk onto the stage, which is hardly a surprise, is it? After all, she needs to ensure that she's the centre of attention. So on she comes, and she gives a little wave to the crowd, and rictus grin plastered as Harry starts to speak. And naturally, she needs to ensure, because Harry's got his back to her, that she asserts control over him. And there's the tap on the back. Harry reacts almost as if like, oh, what's that? Oh, my handler's here. Oh, hi, he says. And, of course, she places her hand on his back, and he puts his arm out to her, and then immediately gives her the brush off because he's in the middle of talking. Now, it's not the case that Harry responds favourably to the appearance of this one's wife. First of all, earlier on, he had clearly gesticulated with his left hand that she was to stay at the side of the stage. This was his moment, and she has disobeyed that. Furthermore, his reaction on her appearance next to him is one of surprise. He clearly did not expect her to be there, and he's focusing on what drivel he wants to spout. Accordingly, he isn't paying her any attention other than when he turned round to acknowledge her presence. He doesn't maintain his hand behind her, he removes it, and certainly doesn't hand over the old cherished mic that this one's wife wants to perform fellatio upon. Accordingly, at this point, she very much is a spare part, and she stands and then turns and leaves. In some instances, she would brazen it out. But what has happened is that when she's come onto the stage, she's received fuel from the acknowledgement of the crowd that perhaps have waved at her, and she had to assert control over Harry to get a response from him, hence the hand on his back. It works. He responds to her, speaks to her, giving her fuel, acknowledging her presence, but then he turns away and continues with the task that he'd already commenced. That wounds her, and it's actually fairly substantial wounding as a consequence of the fact that he is the intimate partner primary source, and he continues with what he's doing, in effect ignoring her in person. Now, many people would look at it and think to themselves, well, yeah, he's acknowledged her and then he's carried on talking, so that's not a problem. But it is for the narcissist. Because, as I've explained on many occasions, it isn't the instance of control in that immediate involvement between the two of them, and then that's it. The necessity of control continues moment by moment by moment. So Harry initially shows that he's under control when he turns to acknowledge her, and then he shatters that control when he turns away from her and carries on talking. So if we imagine when she first touches him on the back, well, when she first arrives, he's not under control. Let's call that moment one. So in moment one, Harry is not under control because he's facing away from her. That is wounding her. Her narcissism compels her to assert control over him, so in moment two, she touches him on the back, he turns, responding to that physical assertion of control, and acknowledges her. In moment two, there isn't a problem. He gives her fuel and shows that he's under control. But then in moment three, he turns away from her and continues to talk, thus wounding her. Now, at this juncture, her narcissism has a number of choices. It could cause her to try and assert control over him again by touching him, pulling on him, grabbing his hand, forcing him to acknowledge her presence. But there's no guarantee that that's necessarily going to work, because Harry's already acknowledged her and he's involved in speaking. Alternatively, she could just stand there. The problem with doing that is that she has been ignored by Harry in that next moment. Not initially, but in that next moment. And therefore, the ignited fury would be trying to make its presence felt. And the facade management would be thinking, we can't have her standing here with a face like thunder. She could potentially start singing and dancing to bring attention onto her. Those of you who are familiar with narcissists will know how they look to upstage. And remember how in the USO incident, she remained on the stage despite people not wanting to have anything to do with her, as she frantically fought to gain that control. But here, her narcissism decides that the method of control over the situation is for her to withdraw. She can't assert control directly over Harry. She isn't able to do so over him indirectly by shouting to the crowd, "Oh, look at old Ginger Bollocks. Who does he think he is, talking away without me?" That won't work because it'll damage her facade because she'll be interrupting him. And therefore, the direct assertion of control won't work, the indirect assertion of control won't work, so her narcissism moves to the third assertion of control, which is withdrawal. So rather than stand there and support him, the narcissism doesn't see there's any value in that, and also recognises that could be problematic as a consequence of the fight between the ignited fury from being ignored and the need to look pleasant, facade management. Thus, her narcissism directs her to leave, and so she walks off, which is actually rather rude and also makes her look rather idiotic. What did you walk on the stage for in the first place if you weren't going to stay? Well, she walked on the stage, of course, because her narcissism directed her to do so that she would get the maximum response, that she could control the three men on the stage and the audience and drink up the fuel. But because Harry wasn't playing ball, because he wanted to talk and he didn't expect her to be there, he ignores her, and therefore she is forced into retreat. It's an excellent example which, when you understand the narcissistic dynamic and the various assertions of control and threats to control, you understand fully why she behaves as she does. And accordingly, she then exits. Inside, she is fuming. Because she's having to withdraw, her narcissism has to cause her to feel a particular way, furious at Harry basically ignoring her, and cause her to think a particular way, which is, he's going to get it when we get back to Monty Shit Show, because he's now painted black, and she will, of course, ensure that he gets a swift tasering to the old pink pods on return to the Monty Shit Show mansion with its 47,000 bathrooms. She heads over to the side, where somebody speaks to her, giving her some fuel, asks for a selfie, which she complies with, because that enables her to assert control over those tertiary sources, and then she's off to the side. So, in effect, what you've witnessed here is Harry rejecting her because she wasn't expected to be centre of the stage, and then when he doesn't give her the control that she craves, her narcissism directs that she has to leave the stage, making her look rather stupid. She walks on, touches him, he goes, "Oh, hi," then carries on talking and ignores her, so she walks off again. Makes her look like an idiot, which she is, and we then see her by the side of the stage where that battle, as I explained in Sidelined and Seething, was taking place in relation to her fury and her facade management. Plenty of aspects of the narcissistic dynamic. The entitlement of walking on the stage, the lack of boundary recognition, the failure to comply with Harry's instruction, wait there, the necessity of the pursuit of control and fuel, the moment-by-moment compartmentalization of the narcissism, the wounding caused by Harry initially not responding to her, then continuing to ignore her when he's talking, and the necessity of retreat in order to maintain the facade, and then lurking by the side of the stage. Harry certainly will have got it in the neck on the journey back, as she will have lashed out at him for his failure to involve her, and that would be her punishing him and continuing to assert control over him through malign manipulations. As ever, the breakdown that you get from your glorious narrator is second to none and helps you understand what's truly going on in relation to the behaviour of this one's wife. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for watching.